Okay, first off I want to apologize for any background noise. My neighbor's cutting the grass. But this is just going to be a bit of a follow-up over that first video. I kind of skipped around a bit and I've done some work and realized just how bad the body is. Swapped out the rear axles with a one piece. Did a little brake work, so it now runs and drives, but still got that pretty nasty knock. Pulled off the oil pan, which I will explain in this video of how I did that, because it's not as simple as I thought it would be. But there's some nice little metal shavings down here. Not fun. But the good news is that pulling off this pan seems to have helped me find the actual problem. Was making that god-awful knocking noise in my first video. Let's see if I can get under here and show you. Okay, so that is definitely toast. Not sure. That seems kind of okay. That one's fine. Maybe all of these should just be replaced. But I'm gonna pull that off in a bit and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I managed to get the cap off, and the bearing definitely does look pretty bad. It was probably spinning in there. So this is the old bearing, and this is going to be the new bearing. You can see there's a little bit of a difference in the way it looks, thickness and whatnot. I'll show you what this looks like now. So what I did was I spun the crank and got to where I could pop the cap off, and now this is the cylinder just pushed up a bit. I'm gonna take some, I think 800 grit sandpaper and kind of resurface this, make sure everything looks okay before I put the new one back on, and hopefully that fixes the knocking issue, and then I can rebuild this whole engine later, because it also smokes, so rebuild is in the future. But for now, just this one bearing. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, I'm just trying to smooth out the surface a bit using an 800 grit sandpaper, some WD-40 as lubricant because it's a wet dry sandpaper, and wrapped it around the crank using this piece of cloth to work it back and forth, just sanding it down a bit. There's a couple of videos on YouTube where you can get a better idea of what I'm doing, if you understand what I'm talking about now. I did the same thing over here for the cap. Polished it up a little bit, not perfect, but it's better than it was and should work, hopefully. Okay, just a quick explanation of how I got the oil pan off. It physically won't come off unless you take this side, the passenger side motor mount, and loosen it up so that it can actually come up. The way I did it is I put a jack underneath the belt housing, jacked it up a little bit, and loosened 2 bolts down here, and then 3 bolts on top that this plate attaches to, and then it kind of just slides up and you can slide out the oil pan towards the driver's side. That's how I did it. It's pretty simple as long as you knew what you had to do when you started, like I did, thanks to other people on YouTube. Spent like an hour trying to polish these up with the sandpaper. It's probably not going to be perfect, but at this point I'm just curious if it even works. Putting it back together, I am going to use some assembly lube Not 100% sure if this is necessary, but it's cheap and apparently it's what you're supposed to use. Yeah, well, this is a new bottle, so I'm gonna have to open it before I put it on. But it's supposed to, help when the new oil and parts all get together. It doesn't just completely destroy your new bearing. Everything back together, and now it's nice and tight. From what I could find online, these bolts are supposed to be at 33 foot-pounds. I use a torque wrench because on this engine I'm trying to at least do some stuff to torque. But if you don't have a torque wrench, just get it nice and snug. Should be okay. Now, what I think the reason for the problems with this engine is someone did not take good care of it. There was a lot of junk in here. It looks like they probably had to replace an oil pump at some point, so they probably ran it with no oil pressure or ran it hot. The head kind of looks like it's either rebuilt or new, just from the fact that it's a different color from the block. Like at one point they had it off and rebuilt or bought a new one. But I'm gonna get this thing back together eventually. I'm waiting for the oil pan paint to dry because I just like to paint stuff when I have it off the vehicle. Nothing fancy, just black. But it helps with rust and kind of helps show that it's been worked on. Okay, so as you can hear in that video, the knock seems to be completely gone. Not only that, but it's running even better. Like, I was having a little bit of idle issue before, and now that seems to have cleared up. Maybe the bad bearing was throwing the timing off somewhat, or at least the detonation was in the wrong spot. But it seems to be working perfectly fine. Well, that's probably going to be it for this video. If you want to see what happens to this piece of rust, whether I keep it, sell it, get something else, completely restore this, because it would be fun to have a CJ with AC. I am going to post other videos, so like, subscribe, don't subscribe, you do what you want. I'm just a guy on YouTube. Ciao.